There is only one day left, only about 24 hours until Ohio State and Georgia take the field in Atlanta for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Welcome back, guys. Whether you're a part of Buckeye Nation, Big Ten Nation, or you're a college football fan, it has been a few days since I've been on the YouTube, but I've been celebrating with family, doing some edits, thinking on the future of the channel, and many other things. But here I am. And one of my thoughts, something that I've thought about, is this game and the ramifications directly for Ohio State if they win this game. I want to go over a little bit, what the ramifications would be if the Buckeyes lose, but we already somewhat have an idea of that. But we should start off with that and then finish off strong. Ohio State has already, in a certain sense, suffered, or they've already been somewhat foretold what the ramifications of this loss would mean for them. And by that I mean the Michigan game. The Michigan game showed what happens when Ohio State loses a game like this. The fan base doesn't react well. There are questions surrounding the program. I can't even believe that an article that I'm going to link it down below. I don't even know if I'll read it, but it talks about Peach Bowl preview. Is Ryan Day's job on the line? I'm simply linking it down below and simply just have the tab open to read it, just to see how asinine that opinion can be. The fact that his job being on the line is even a discussion is lunacy. It's idiocy. But yet, it's out in the open. Yet, it's there. It's right there. Because of a big-time loss. Because of a loss where there was a lot of pressure in that game. There's just a lot of pressure to win. Especially because of the loss to Michigan last year. It's sort of like in 2020, when Ohio State took the field against Clemson after losing them to the year prior. A lot of pressure for the Buckeyes to win. Except in that game, they were more or less underdogs. And they came out and they smoked Clemson. And there was a lot of momentum heading into that Bama game. And then Ohio State got destroyed, but they beat Clemson. They smoked Clemson. And because they won under pressure, because they won in what seemed to be a grave, volatile position, the season, no one looks at that season as a failure. Ohio State finished number 2 in the country. Their defense and many other aspects of that team regressed compared to 2019, and yet they finished ahead of them by getting revenge on Clemson and advancing further in the college football playoff. This 2022 Ohio State team is superior to that 2020 team, superior to the 2021 team. It's just my opinion. And they're superior to a lot of Urban Meyer teams. When you look at how they play on the field, when you look at statistics, all these other things point to this being a very great Ohio State team. One of the best Ohio State teams in the past decade or 2 decades. But all of this is a ramification of a loss in a big-time game, a game that Ohio State as a program and as a fan base, as a player group, as a coaching staff expect to win. The team isn't viewed in that regard. And they're not viewed in that regard, and some of them view this team as worse than last year's team because for the first time ever in Big Ten history, when it came to the East Division and the West Division, Ohio State hasn't finished tied for first or first in their division. Every time that Ohio State finished in the East and didn't win, they didn't get to go to Indy. Every time that happened, Ohio State still got a share of the division title. Still got it. In 2015 and 16, they didn't win the East. Michigan State and Penn State did. But because both Michigan State and Ohio State in 15 and Penn State and Ohio State in 16 had one divisional loss, they shared the title of first in the Big Ten East, and both teams still got an East Division trophy. In 2021, it was the same thing with Ohio State and Michigan. And here comes 2022, and Ohio State, when it comes to divisional finish, actually reaches a new low, a low that has been unfamiliar. They don't even get the consolation prize. They finish second in the Big Ten East, which is something that was possible. Preseason, regular season, everyone thought it was possible, but when it came time to pick the winner and the loser of the game, I myself, and a lot of people, picked Ohio State to win. And I couldn't have been more wrong. As I said in my reaction video to that game, the first quarter of that game that I witnessed couldn't have set me up worse for the blowout that was to come. And the ramification of that loss in the game, the ramification of that is the Yahoo Sports article that asks if Ryan Day's job is on the line, which we're not even going to read that today because just that title tells you everything you need to know about the article. But what I am going to read to you is an article by ClutchPoints.com talking about Ohio State's college football playoff berth after the Michigan loss, what it means for Ohio State, what Ryan Day thinks about regarding his team and what he wants his team to feel entering this matchup. Because the ramifications of a loss in this game will be similar to that of Michigan, except it'll be exaggerated even more. It'll be put under a microscope. There will be more questions about Ryan Day and how good of a head coach he really is. There will be more questions about the roster, the mental toughness of this team. Every question that was brought about by the Michigan loss in Columbus will be enlarged by a loss to Georgia. No matter how big or how small, it will exaggerate, it will enlarge, it will feed the questions that were created after that game on November 26th. But a win creates something different. A win doesn't necessarily erase what happened on that day. But a win will do multiple things, even if that means Ohio State loses in the national title. Even if, and that would likely be to Michigan again, but still, a playoff win is a playoff win. No one can take that away from you. A win in the playoffs is another win against a top 10 team. It's another New Year's Six Bowl win. It's a playoff win in its own separate category. Very few coaches have, let alone one. Even Jim Harbaugh currently doesn't have one playoff win. And according to analytics, according to analysts, according to many fans, according to people who cover this sport on YouTube or social media like myself, he'll pick up his first college football playoff win. Jim Harbaugh will tomorrow. But he hasn't yet. Ryan Day has one playoff win. Getting another, doubling his playoff wins, will help. A win for Ohio State means multiple things. But before that, I want to read this article by Clutch Points talking about what Ryan Day thinks about getting this college football playoff berth and what it means for his team. Ohio State, as we all know, they needed the help of USC losing and TCU losing to give them ground when it came to being selected to be a part of the college football playoff. Utah blew out USC. Kansas State beat TCU in overtime with a field goal. The committee decided to move Ohio State to number 4 in the final rankings, which means they would take on number 1 Georgia in the Peach Bowl. Ryan Day said there was a range of emotions for his team over the 8-day span, from the loss of Michigan up to the CFP selection show. And I myself, you could witness it with the Ohio State fan base and with the college football, the college football community. I was one of the earlier people who said that even with that bad loss, Ohio State would need some help to get in potentially, but it wouldn't be a lot, and it would be very likely that Ohio State would not only make the playoff, but that they could do some damage in the playoff. And I remember some of the initial comments on that video and they were by Buckeye fans who were still emotional, but they were like, there's no way this team could do damage in the playoffs. and there's no way they'll make it. And then a day later, or 2 days later, the confidence begins to climb. Then the Pac-12 championship happens, and the confidence completely skyrockets, and we all basically know that Ohio State's a playoff lock. And now some of those same fans are probably arguing that Ohio State can play Georgia close, or even beat Georgia. Ryan Day continued by saying, I think at the time, it certainly gave us an injection of energy, excitement for sure, coming off that weekend and into that week. Day said during a press conference on Friday ahead of the Peach Bowl, the next week it was a range of emotions. It allowed us an opportunity to have great energy and great focus and edge during the month of preparation for sure. So we'll see. We'll see tomorrow night. We'll see where we're at. Multiple OSU players noted that they felt hefty pressure heading into the game. It's especially being the case that before the game, Ohio State hadn't beaten Michigan since 2019. Michigan, depending on who you ask, either dodged them in 2020 or they were sick with COVID. I, even as a Michigan fan, intend to believe the former, that my program actually dodged the Buckeyes. But the game didn't happen, so I'm not going to count it as an automatic win either. But Ohio State, they didn't play and beat Michigan since 2019. They lost in embarrassing fashion last year when everyone picked them to win. There was hefty pressure for them to win that game. Many people expected them to win it. Many people said if they didn't win it, it would be a negative historical turning point for the Buckeyes and Ryan Day. For the Buckeyes' upcoming college football playoff clash with Georgia, Day does not want his team to once again be overwhelmed with added pressure. I just think you go back to your training, Day said. You can't focus on things like that. What it comes down to is just playing hard in practice and then going back on your training once you get out there and playing physical with your teammates. There's going to be good plays. There's going to be bad plays. But just go out there and look up at the scoreboard at the end of the game. That's what we're going to do in this game. We're going to play as hard as we possibly can. There will be ups, there will be downs and twists and turns in this game, but play as hard as we can. You can't worry about things like that in a game like this. Emotions sometimes can help a team in a game. But I will say when it comes from a strategizing standpoint and a decision-making standpoint, emotions, not just on, a college football level, but on a governmental, economic decision-making level, or from a personal level, emotions have their pros and cons. And for Ohio State, as a team, this year, the one game where they were really emotional and you got to see it, it ended in nothing short but abject disaster. The unsportsmanlike penalties, the complete lack of discipline in coverage, the multiple drops. You could see that the moment, not necessarily that the moment was too big for this team, but that this team let their emotions get the best of them. They just did. When things weren't going according to plan, they folded straight up. And you just cannot have that against Georgia. You can't have that against any team. If you fold when things get tough and when the unexpected happens, you will, you'll lose. That's what folding is in those moments. But I do think that it is very important that, Ohio State here, they have to keep their composure. And I've said this time and time again. It's part of the reason why I think the only way Ohio State has a hope to win is if they get up early by double digits. Because I don't know if in a close, grinded out game, if Ohio State has the mentality and the toughness to not melt down. But Ryan Day, he recognizes this problem as well. Clearly, the winner of this showdown between Ohio State and Georgia will face TCU or Michigan in the college football playoff national title game. Ryan Day recognizes this problem. I guarantee you he and his staff are trying to do whatever they can, or whatever they could have in the month leading up to tomorrow's Peach Bowl. There's only so much you can do in that time frame, but the problem's been recognized. Tomorrow, we'll get a chance to see if it's been fixed, but even if that problem has been fixed, Georgia's viewed as the number one team in the country for a reason. Even if Ohio State plays a near-perfect game and they're disciplined, Georgia could still beat them. But a win for Ohio State means so much. A win in Atlanta will not only show Ohio State's prowess, but it will shut down the SEC's national title hopes. The SEC this year has been extremely weak. Outside of Georgia, and really Georgia, and somewhat Tennessee, the SEC and all the teams in it have been viewed as either inconsistent, weak, or faux and fake. Alabama's the perfect example of this. Alabama, the Crimson Tide, their best win is over an 8-5 Texas. It'll be over a 9-4 Mississippi State if they manage to beat Illinois with interim head coach Zach Arnett. But Alabama, they haven't played much of anyone, and when they have played someone, they've lost. The teams that they've played that have 9 wins or more, they've lost to. They've lost to a 9-4 LSU and a 10-2 Tennessee, who has a chance to be 11-2 in tonight's Orange Bowl. But Alabama, much weaker than last year. Their offense and defense statistically are impressive, but if you've watched them play, you know that in games against opponents with competency, with above-average talent and above-average coaching, they will struggle. And even at times, they struggle against teams that are not good, like Texas A&M. Arkansas is a 7-6 team that barely escaped Kansas. They got blown out by Texas A&M, and their highlight of the year has basically been KJ Jefferson and their running back, whose name I forget. Florida, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Auburn, Texas A&M, they've had losing records. South Carolina has improved from last season. Kentucky fell off big time. Same with Ole Miss. I mean, it is really Georgia and Tennessee. If Alabama beats Kansas State, then put Alabama up there too. But the SEC has been very weak this year. It is Georgia compared to everyone else. I mean, Georgia would dominate anyone in the SEC if they faced them again. If Ohio State wins, the SEC's streak of winning national titles, which has been back to 2019, will be over. And if Ohio State wins this game, since Michigan will likely beat TCU for the first time since 2014, the winner of it all would be from the Big Ten. It'd be big for the Big Ten, but it would also be huge for the college football nation as a whole, who've been tired of the SEC dominance, and it would show that Ohio State is not to be played with. It would show the world and the nation that they are a true playoff team and that they do belong in the college football playoff. Ohio State will gain plenty of momentum with this win, and it will likely mean a near perfect performance by Ryan Day and company on offense and on defense. You know, you've seen it against Oregon and Tennessee and LSU. Georgia brings their A game. They get up, especially on offense. And on defense too, but especially on offense, watching that Oregon and LSU game where they put up a combined 99 points and Bennett looked like, prime what's his face? Like he looked like Joe Burrow in that game, in those games. It was insane. Georgia's bringing their A+ game. Ohio State, with a win here, will probably play their A or A+ game in this win, showing that they can utilize the talent that they have recruited over the past several years. And it will show that, the Jim Knowles hire was great. I mean, I can imagine if Ohio State wins this game, their defense will have some big moments. It will answer a lot of questions about how Ohio State is using its resources from a coaching staff, recruiting, NIL standpoint. It'll answer a lot of those, and Ohio State will probably have to play its best game in years in order to beat this Georgia team, in my opinion. But I think that they can do it. I think that this Ohio State team, as I've already mentioned, under Ryan Day, this is his second best Ohio State team. They have the tools. They have the weapons on offense and defense. They have the defensive coordinator. They have the offensive play caller in Ryan Day. They have all the tools they need to win the national title. The question is, do they make good decisions? Are they efficient? Do they utilize what they have? Or do they melt down when things get close? Do they let emotions get the better of them and are too aggressive or too conservative when it comes to play calling? There's a lot of questions and a lot of factors, but as much as we've seen Ryan Day and at times his not positive decision making, we have also seen him win big games. We've seen him and his teams execute masterful game plans. We know that he can win big games, that the Ohio State Buckeyes can look and can be the number one team in the country. A huge victory here, and by huge I don't mean like a close victory that like comes off a field goal. If Ohio State comes out and does to the Buckeye and does to the Dogs, not the Buckeyes, but does to the Dogs what, let's say, Alabama did last year in the SEC championship game, it will show, not just show, but it will scream that Ryan Day can win big games. A win here with a field goal, and that's just me saying things, it would still be big, and it will still bring him to that 7-4 record in top 10 games, and it will bring him to 2-2 in that college football playoff. But imagine the energy, and imagine how many of the doubtful questions would be silenced or answered if Ohio State just came out and shattered Georgia, like what John Mechie, Jamison Williams, and Bryce Young did to the Bulldogs back in last year's 2021 SEC championship game. So a lot of questions would be answered. Some of them, would still be up in the air because of that 1-2 record versus Michigan and because of that 2-year streak of not winning the Big Ten. But a playoff win, it'd give Ohio State its 12th win of the season. It would give them a lock to be a top 2 team in the country when the final polls come out. And it would likely, more importantly, when it comes to redemption, it gives Ryan Day and his team a chance to either win the national title, and importantly, along with that, it gives them a chance to, more likely than not, face Michigan again for the second time in the season and bring Ryan Day's record against Michigan back to 500 and winning a national title while doing that. It comes with more reward and more risk if Ohio State wins this playoff game in a certain sense. And since the Buckeyes are a high competing university, when it comes to football, basketball, and other sports, but mainly football, that's what you want if you're an Ohio State fan. That's what you want, is for Ohio State and Ryan Day to come out and prove themselves in the Peach Bowl. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.